Hello, this is a guy who likes fanfiction and is too lazy to read, so here is the Blade Breaker's Daughters in audio form. Check the description for the links to the author. Chapter 1, An Accidental Hit. For many people, the mercenary lifestyle seemed like a fantasy. Being able to travel to and fro, paid riches from nobles, and perhaps even save a lover-to-be. In reality, it was not like that. Not at all. Sure, you would be traveling, but oftentimes it would mean not having a place to truly call home. Nobles may hire you, but they're just as likely to cut you loose if it'd profit them, and the chances of saving someone who'd fall for you wasn't exactly an everyday occurrence. Worst of all, sometimes you don't have enough food to go around. Hence why young Byleth Eisner was currently hunting, having volunteered to get some food as rations were running low. Normally her father wouldn't let her get so far away from the camp without him, but even he had to admit that his silent daughter would be able to track a prey without alerting it. With soft, even breaths, the young mercenary pulled her bowstring taut, keeping her eyes on the deer before her. The wild animal was completely unaware of who was stalking it as it grazed in the fields. As soon as it lifted its head, an arrow would fly through its neck. A loud rustling from the other side of the deer caught its attention, making it run as Byleth let the arrow loose in hopes of hitting it. Gah! That did not sound like a deer. Staying quiet, Byleth moved her way to the bush where the scream came from, and parted it to be greeted with the sight of a girl with purple hair. One who was currently lying on the ground and bleeding from the arrow pierced into her shoulder, having seemingly gone unconscious from the pain. Shouldering her bow, Byleth reached down to pick up the girl, and trudge her way back to the camp. After all, her father told her if there was a problem, best bring it to him. Granted, he probably never expected a problem to be a bleeding unconscious girl that his own daughter had shot. Thankfully all his years as a mercenary, well, they didn't exactly prepare him for this moment, but they were enough to keep him cool as he took the young girl to get her patched up. And by that, he meant taking her to the group's medic, who saw to her without any problems, aside from some exasperation at being called up for something so easy. Even so, he made sure to stay nearby, keeping an eye on the girl as she rested in the infirmary tent after being patched up, especially as he noted some things about her. Age-wise, she seemed about the same age as Byleth, and while it seemed she probably hadn't eaten recently, he could see the calluses on her hands telling him she was at least used to wielding a weapon. Add in the fact that she also had a knife meant that she was a hunter, or even a mercenary. Geralt couldn't help but frown at the thought. Sure, Byleth might technically be one as well, but that was because he had trained her to protect herself, and he couldn't just leave her anywhere. This girl on the other hand, he didn't know what her circumstances were, but he was never fond of young fighters having to risk their lives. What in the world has your life been like? He muttered under his breath, watching the strange girl. He considered leaving. At the end of the day, the girl wasn't his. He already had one kid to take care of, and whoever this kid was, she wasn't any of his business. But it was his daughter who put an arrow through her shoulder. So he stayed until she stirred awake. Her eyes fluttered open slowly, blearily, before shooting open when she seemed to realize she was somewhere unfamiliar. Easy there, Geralt soothed, raising a hand to her. Not touching, just close by. He probably shouldn't be treating a scared kid like a startled horse, but in the absence of experience, he fell back on what was familiar. How are you feeling? The girl had purple eyes, similar in shade to her bright hair. It was a surprise Byleth hadn't managed to spot her, even in the forest. Maybe he should get her eyes checked. Where am I and who are you? That was more direct than he expected. There was suspicion in the girl's gaze, but it looked like she was sizing him up. It occurred to him that he should have taken the knife from her belt. You're in my camp. I'm Geralt, the leader of Geralt's mercenaries. Not for the first time, he considered whether he should rename his band into something less self-referential, before discarding the thought. What's your name? You're a mercenary. Weirdly, the girl brightened up. She suddenly sat up with a smile on her face, one that barely faltered from the leftover sting of her healed wound, even if he did hear her hiss through her teeth. My name is Shay, sir. I'm best with using a sword, but I am capable of using any weapon, and I can read and write. I can also cook and clean if you need it, and I am very cheap to hire. I only need 3 meals a day and somewhere to sleep, and I promise I will work for you very faithfully. What? Her smile almost faltered. I can work for 2 meals a day. No lower. That, kid, what are you talking about? She stared at him, then tried another smile. You said you're a mercenary, so I want to work for you. I've done it before, I know how it works. You've done it before? Yeah. 3 times. I'm experienced. Gerald didn't know what to do with that information. All right, slow down. How old are you? 10. The girl pouted. I'm not 10, I'm 12. 12, probably. You don't know how old you are. He tried not to sigh. How does a kid work for 3 mercenary companies before she's even 15? Oh, easy. My parents died, then my mom died, and the village says I can't have the house, so I gotta get money and I met a guy named Dieter and he said I could help his group because I can read and he can't and then he got hanged so I joined the people that hanged him for crimes and then they all got eaten by a giant wolf so I wandered for a while. Gerald let the girl ramble. It was easier than asking more questions. He was so used to his own quiet, unemotive daughter that he had no idea how to interact with more energetic kids. As if summoned by his thoughts, Byleth chose then to come into the tent. She stared at the new girl, Shay, for a second, before directing her attention back to him. Papa. Hey kid, he greeted, letting his daughter sit beside him. Who's that? That, it took him a second to realize Shay was the one that asked. This is Byleth, my daughter. She's the one that found you. He decided to be diplomatic and avoid mentioning just how Byleth found her. I shot you with an arrow. Byleth, however, didn't understand his plan at all. That was you. Kids could be loud, apparently. Had it really been that long since he interacted with a non-quiet child? Yeah. You were behind the deer. I was hunting that deer. Oh, you should be quieter when hunting. I was being quiet. Gerald quickly realized he should step in. Look, Shay, if you need a place to stay for a bit, I don't mind letting you stick around till we get to town. Before she could argue, he raised a hand. For now, why don't we get you something to eat? Based on the loud growl her stomach let out, she agreed with the idea. Thank you, sir. Well, she was polite at least. Even if she kept glaring at Byleth for an understandable reason. He just remembered that someone still needed to go hunting later since Byleth hadn't actually brought any food back. And, well, while the food at the camp wasn't bad by any means, the young kid acted like it was cooked by a royal chef with how eagerly she ate what he brought her. So, does this mean I'm hired? Shay asked when she had finished eating, to which Gerald sighed in response. Is she joining? Byleth asked, glancing up to her father. Look, I'm not about to hire a child mercenary, but if you want to make yourself useful, I can give you some chores. Thank you, sir. Don't mention it, but try to get some rest first, okay? I'd hate for your injury to get worse. Especially since it was his kid who had caused it. Sir, yes, sir. Gerald wasn't sure if he should be glad she knew how to properly respond, but he left it at that as he got up to leave with Byleth. How long is she staying? His daughter asked after they had left the tent. Just for a few days, if we're lucky enough we might find someone to take her in. As is, I'd rather not let someone who already joined 3 mercenary gangs at such a young age wander on her own. Is it bad that I'm also a mercenary? Well, no. I mean, you're not really a mercenary, I'm just training you to defend yourself, is all. Are you going to train her then? No. She's injured for one, and I don't plan on keeping her around for long. But shouldn't she know how to defend herself? Gerald couldn't help but let out an exasperated sigh. He couldn't believe it. Here he was, Gerald the Blade Breaker, the strongest mercenary in Fodlan, and he couldn't even win an argument with his kid. The fact that Byleth was even arguing was throwing him off. Kid usually just went with whatever he did. Fine, I'll teach her some things, but don't expect her to stick around. If only Gerald knew how wrong he would be. Chapter 2, The New Kid in Camp. Hey, has anyone else noticed that the captain has a kid around? A mercenary asked one day after they had set up camp, whispering to one of his fellow sellswords while they relaxed after the day's march. What? Of course he has a kid around, that's his daughter. Are you that oblivious? I know about Byleth. I meant the other girl, the one with the purple hair. You know, the one he keeps making do chores. The second mercenary tilted her head in thought. It was a long thought. Oh yeah. Seriously? Yeah, that is weird. Has he always had 2 kids? No, of course. Wait, is she his kid? Probably, right? Why would he have a random kid around the camp? I don't know, maybe she's the new chore girl or something. Why would the captain hire a chore girl? He has a daughter, he can make her do chores. Right, that's what I'm saying. The second mercenary paused. What were you saying again? No, hold on, what was I had a point, what was it? The first mercenary furrowed his brow and crossed his arms over his chest. Right. What's with the new girl? That's what I was saying. What new girl? A third mercenary asked while walking by, leading to a further confused conversation. Still, Shay's presence had received some notice from the mercenaries in Geralt's camp. Not much, given most of the sellswords had better things to do than wonder about a random child in their midst, but still some notice. For a mercenary in Fodlan, having a family wasn't particularly unusual. Many soldiers for hire worked to support family members back in their hometowns, after all. It was slightly unusual to have a child present in a mercenary camp, given the inherent danger of the lifestyle, but the mercs under Geralt's command had gotten used to Byleth. It helped that the captain's daughter was a very quiet, unobtrusive child who never really interacted with anyone aside from her father unless prompted. Shay was not like that. Shay seemed to go out of her way to interact with the mercs, asking them if they needed any help cleaning their gear, helping carry supplies to and fro, even staring quite intensely at any sparring matches going on. So it came to no surprise that word kept spreading around about the new kid. Do you think she's his kid? A mercenary asked while he watched the young girl cleaning clothes. Maybe. Neither of them look like him though. And they also don't look like each other. Maybe they have different moms. Another suggested. Well, they most definitely do, but what does that matter? Just thinking, Captain used to be from the Knights of Ceros, yeah? At his fellow mercs nods, the first one continued. And he also used to live at Garreg Mach, where the central church is, right? Both of which he doesn't want to go near. Just get on with your point. I'm getting there. What I'm trying to say is, maybe he was married to someone over in the central church, but then he had an affair. What? The captains from the central church, a fourth mercenary walking by with a box in his arms asked, prompting immediate shushing from his fellows. Not too loud. Captain Geralt doesn't like people talking about his past. Probably because of the affair, the first mercenary said. What? There was an affair. We don't know there was an affair, the second merc contradicted, though the third looked thoughtful. He is really weird about church stuff. But would he have an affair? He doesn't seem like the type. You never know, the first pointed out, there's some reason why he doesn't talk about his time at the church unless he's 10 cups in. Can priests even get married? The fourth asked. The trio of chatty mercs stared at him for a moment, before turning to each other again in a unanimous decision to ignore him. Not that it dissuaded him as he stood nearby, piping in occasionally as they continued. So, let's say that the captain did have an affair, why is the other kid here now? Maybe something happened with the mom? If she wasn't that rich, maybe she couldn't afford to keep her around. Do nuns get paid a lot? Still, even if she couldn't keep her kid, wouldn't it be safer to give her to an orphanage? Well, you know how the captain is with the first kid, could be he didn't want to give her up. Does he actually care though? Girl has only been here for a few days, and he's been making her do chores the entire time. Maybe the mom is dead, and that's why he had to take her in. I don't know, I don't see the captain treating a kid of his as a chore girl. You know how protective he is of little Byleth. Byleth isn't that little anymore. He's been having her help out more. Fishing doesn't count as helping. Hunting does though. Fishing completely counts. Fish is great. Agreed with the new guy, fish is good. What are you idiots doing? The quartet paused in their discussion, then looked to a new addition to their gabbing gaggle. Oh hey healer. Hey, you know the new kid. The medic raised her eyebrow. Do you mean Shay? Yeah, her, purple hair girl, the tiny one. She's actually pretty tall for her age. Sure, whatever. Do you know anything about her? I know the captain brought her in with an arrow in her shoulder. Aside from that though, she's in good health, if a little underfed, the medic explained, not noticing the looks the first and second mercenaries gave each other. What are you all even chatting about anyway? Just if the new girl is the captain's kid or not. Huh. I don't think so. Are you taking bets? We weren't, but we could be. 5 gold on not. Alright, I'll make a note of that, the third mercenary concluded, before turning back to his fellows. Who were back to whispering again. I guarantee it, the mother was killed and that's why Gerald took Shay in. But why? Was it some kind of assassination? That doesn't make sense, you can't assassinate commoners. Nobles get assassinated, commoners get murdered. What if she was noble? Oh. Or what if it was Gerald's church wife? She could have tracked them down, used church assassins. The church doesn't have assassins, does it? We could ask the captain. Hey captain! The 3 mercenaries went stiff, all looking at the 4th member of their cohort, who was waving over towards Gerald. The captain of their band glanced up from the log book he was writing in and raised an eyebrow. What? Does the church have assass, MFH? Gerald's eyebrow remained raised as he watched one of the newer mercs get tackled by 2 of his seniors. Does the church have what? Captain, sir. He glanced down as Shay stood at attention. The kid saluted. The clothes are clean and now drying, sir. Hanging up to dry. It's at the pole. You don't need to give me a full report every time, Shay. But, thanks. Why don't you go play with Byleth for a while? Gerald knew Byleth didn't go out of her way to interact with other kids, but she should hang around someone her age during her free time. At least, he was pretty sure she should. If nothing else, she needed a break from training. Of course, Captain, sir. Shay saluted again, before heading over to where Byleth was swinging a wooden sword. Maybe he just found her and decided to keep her around so his kid would have a friend. The second mercenary suggested while still keeping the 4th one pinned to the ground. Would that count as kidnapping? The third one asked. Captain wouldn't do that, right? And before that specific thread could be continued, a loud yelp could be heard. Looking over at the sound, they spotted Shay on the ground, clutching her head with a wooden sword at her side, with Byleth standing over her. The latter of whom had seemingly hit her possible sister on the head. Hey, no sparring if no one is keeping an eye on you two. Gerald said, taking the sword from Byleth. Right, guess that means I'm up, the healer said, pushing herself up to check on Shay. Kinda seems like she's not a fan of the new kid, the first merc noted. Well, she doesn't really seem to like anyone really. True, but also, maybe she doesn't like her cause she's an affair kid. That kinda stuff can ruin a family. Wait, but we've never seen Byleth's mother around. Doesn't that mean the family's already ruined? That's a rough way to think of things. I was raised by my dad on his own and I turned out fine. You're choking out the new guy. Oh, crap, didn't realize. The second merc got off of the less than conscious 4th. I'm not helping you carry him, the first mercenary said. Shit, guess I'll need to make it up to him. Hey, do any of you know his name? Man, I don't know your name, why would I know his? Wait, really? Why would I? The third merc asked with a quirked eyebrow. I'm an archer, so unless you're helping me support everyone else, I don't especially know anyone. Guess that makes sense, I tend to be near the front, the first mercenary responded. Same, though I'm part of the mounted squad, the most you'll get out of me is me paying enough attention to not run you over, the second merc joked as he lifted up the unconscious new guy. Gee, thanks pal. Huffing, The first merc looked back over at the captain and his kids, where the captain was currently telling Byleth not to whack the new girl if she didn't have any armor on. Both kids were listening along, with the purple-haired girl seeming weirdly invested in whatever the captain was saying. Maybe he could start a betting pool on if the cap did have an affair? Chapter 3, The Start of Friendship? Shay had to admit, while it wasn't exactly what she was expecting, she did find it nice to work for Geralt's mercenaries. Sure, some of the mercs were weird, but the food was nice, and having an actual tent to sleep under was even better. Though there was one big oddity, namely that of Captain Geralt's kid, Byleth. She wasn't sure what was up with the blue-haired girl, but she hardly ever talked, and most of the time she did, it was to her dad. She was also very strong. Sure, she wasn't much of a match for any of the adults, but Shay couldn't even land a single hit on her. And, she wasn't sure why, but that really irked her. A part of Shay couldn't help but want to win against the strange girl. Was this like the destined rival thing her mom used to tell her about in those stories? Which, if that was the case, wow, she had a destined rival. Hey Byleth. Shay called out to attract the attention of her newly found foe, you're my destined rival. Okay, Byleth replied. Then she turned back to continue setting up the training dummies some of the older mercenaries used. Actually, now that Shay was thinking about it, shouldn't she be helping with that too? Heading on over, Shay held the training dummy as Byleth made sure it was properly secured. You know, you could at least be a bit more excited about being rivals, Shay said as they moved on to the next dummy. What's a destined rival? Huh? You really don't know what that is? Shay asked, getting a blank stare in return. Doesn't your dad read you stories? Should he? Well, I guess he doesn't have to. Still, if you're going to be my rival, you should know your stuff. At Byleth's stare, she continued, striking what she thought was a heroic pose. It involved a lot of pointing, first at the sky, then at Byleth. And I shall teach you. Okay. We need to work on you being excited. Hey, does your dad, does Captain Geralt have any books to read from? That might make things easier. It was hard to tell if Byleth was thinking about the question or not, but Shay was patient. Well, mostly. She might have given Byleth a poke in the side when she took too long. Don't do that. You could at least say you don't know instead of staying quiet. Byleth just stared silently at her in response. Right, we can ask him later. All you need to know is that it means we're gonna be making each other stronger. But I'm already stronger than you. That's just for now. If I keep training, I'm sure I'll be able to beat you one day. Besides, I haven't even used magic in our fights yet. You can use magic. Oh? That seemed to have gotten her interested, at least, Shay thought so since Byleth's eyes opened a bit. That I can, my mom taught me. Well, she taught her a spell, but it was still something. Can you show me? You bet I can. Shay smiled brightly, then tried to think back on her mother's lessons. She was pretty sure she said something about using tomes to safely channel magic, but, it would probably be safe. Grinning, she brought her hand up, aiming at the training dummy, and began to focus as a white sigil began to form in front of her hand. Shay would soon come to learn the importance of using tomes when you weren't that used to magic, as the sigil abruptly broke, sending Shay backwards as it did. Ugh, that's never happened before. Shay said, slowly getting up. Are you okay? She heard Byleth ask her. Yeah, I'm good. Shay stopped talking the instant she saw a trail of blood leaking from Byleth's forehead. Are you okay? She got up and rushed over to Byleth, who regarded her with her usual blank look. Which might be a bad thing, since Shay vaguely remembered head injuries being bad injuries. Why you're bleeding? Shay shouted and tried wiping the blood away, though it only seemed to annoy Byleth since she tried pushing her away. I'm okay. No, you're not. Shay responded, grabbing her hand and trying to pull her along. If she hadn't been panicking, she likely would have noticed the nearby mercs watching the scene play out, a few chuckling at Shay's franticness. As it stood, she was far more focused on the fact that Byleth kept bleeding and that she needed to fix this. Oh no, if Geralt found out, he'd kick her out of the group for sure. Thankfully Shay was able to find the medic, who seemed a bit confused to see her dragging Byleth over. Please stop the bleeding. The healer sighed, her shoulders slumping. Great, what did you two do this time? It was just an accident, no need to tell the captain. Shay said, as Byleth finally pulled her hand free, seeming more annoyed at getting dragged around than the blood leaking down her face. Sighing again, the medic kneeled down, wiping away the blood to try and look at the wound. Well, the good news is that it's not a bad cut, it just looks like it is because wounds above the eye bleed easily, the medic said, sitting Byleth down as she went to grab her supplies. But it's a lot of blood. And head injuries are bad, right? I just said they bleed a lot. And sure, they can be, but this is just a cut, she explained. The healer brushed Byleth's hair back and dabbed at the wound with a cloth. Despite everything, Byleth didn't even make a noise of discomfort at the sensation, instead just watching as the medic worked. I don't even need to use a vulnerary for something this small, okay? But. I said it's fine. I swear, you're worse than Geralt. Shay blinked. I am. Wait, what's so bad about the captain? Not too much these days, aside from his drinking habits and his stubborn tendencies that make my work harder. I've heard some stories about just how protective he can be of this little weirdo though. Hey. The healer paused and glanced at Shay, who was glaring at her. Don't call Byleth a weirdo. She's my destined rival. Sure, kid. She looked back to Byleth and gave her a pat on the head. The weirdo comment was meant to be affectionate. You're easily the least annoying patient I have to deal with, if just because you actually stay quiet during exams. Okay, Byleth replied, as monotone as ever. Shay was mollified, but only barely, as she still frowned at the healer to show her displeasure. The medic made an amused noise, before placing a small bandage across Byleth's cut. Keep this on for the day. There might be a little scar, but nothing that won't fade in time. Okay. Really? She's okay? Shay asked, pressing closer than the medic would have preferred in her attempt to check on her rival. She's fine. What did you two do to get her hurt anyway? More sword fighting. In an instant, Shay went from checking on Byleth with some obvious concern to ducking her head and fidgeting with her hands. An icicle hit her, it wasn't my fault. An icicle, huh? At this time of year? In this part of Fodlan? In the middle of our camp. Yes. Well, that is concerning. You two should show me where the icicles are growing so we can clear them off. We don't want anyone else to get accidentally hit, do we? Okay, Byleth agreed, before she hopped down from the stool and walked out of the tent, apparently intent on leading the way, much to Shay's immediate alarm. Byleth. Don't, wait up. The healer smiled faintly as she watched the new girl scurry after Byleth. She didn't particularly like kids, but seeing Geralt's near-silent daughter hanging around with a kid her age, well, it made her seem less creepy, at least. Miss Healer lady. Then Shay popped her head back into the tent again. What is it, kid? Do you want me to actually see these icicles of yours? No. I mean, they're kind of not real, anyway, thank you for your help. And please don't tell Captain Geralt. I won't. She didn't need to. Half the camp was bound to tell him the instant he got back. Shay smiled brightly at her response though, so the healer decided not to mention that part. Thank you. And, what's your name? Gertrude. Okay. Thank you, Miss Gertrude. Gertrude the healer watched Shay scamper off again, probably to keep Byleth from showing off whatever mishap she caused. She had a feeling she'd see the two of them in her tent sooner rather than later. Hopefully later, if just because she didn't particularly like seeing injured children, but she wasn't going to get her hopes up. Somehow, Shay didn't consider the fact that Byleth's new bandage was really obvious. Obvious to the point that Geralt immediately noticed and asked about it while the two of them were busy sorting some of the equipment. An icicle hit me, Byleth explained, and Shay felt a weird mix of relief and guilt when she heard the other girl lie for her. An icicle, huh? I did notice one of the practice dummies seemed frostier than usual, Geralt noted, and Shay felt the guilty part start to grow. An icicle hit it too. Is that so? You Captain Geralt, sir, Shay spoke up, tentatively raising her hand as she prepared to admit her guilt. It was my fault. I wanted to show off my magic, but I wasn't able to control it. Now that makes more sense, Geralt said, nodding his head. You cast a spell without a tome. Yes, my mom told me it wasn't safe, but I wanted to show off. Geralt was only able to let out a sigh before Shay spoke up again. Please don't kick me out of the group. I swear I won't do it again. That gave him some pause. He didn't think Shay would be that attached to his group, but, as he thought about it, it did make some sense. A girl who lost her mother, was basically thrown out of her village, and joined 3 different mercenary bands would probably have attachment issues. Crap, he definitely couldn't leave her at the next village if that was the case. There was no way she would take it well. He sighed. I'm not going to kick you out, Shay. She immediately lit up. You mean it? Yeah, but you better not practice magic again without a tome. Or someone to show you how to cast properly, Geralt said, before muttering something about finding a mage to do so. Thank you, sir. Shay couldn't believe her luck at being able to stick around. Out of all the groups she's worked with before, this one was by far the easiest and best gig. Heck, she might just be a chore girl again, but she got plenty of good meals. Just make sure to finish sorting the equipment, okay? Sir, yes, sir. Oh, Captain, I did want to ask you something. You wouldn't happen to have any books that have a hero and a rival, do you? I can check. Why do you ask? Because, Byleth is my destined rival and she doesn't know what that means, so I have to show her. Blinking, Geralt turned to look at Byleth, who met his gaze. She's going to teach me? Geralt wasn't sure, but had the two of them become friends? I'll see what I can find. It was always hard to tell, but for a second, Geralt saw a glimmer of what could have been happiness in his daughter's eyes. Yeah, maybe keeping Shay around was a good idea. Chapter 4, Smile. Shay let out a yelp as her wrist was smacked with a training sword, making her drop her own wooden blade, before Byleth placed her sword against her throat. Shay couldn't help but take a step back as her rival's eyes bore into her. All right, that's enough training, Geralt said, getting both of the girls' attention. Byleth moved back the instant she registered his words, leaving Shay to relax without the wooden blade at her neck. Good job, Shay. You've been improving, but you still have to be careful about overextending yourself. Despite the slight praise, Shay couldn't help but pout a bit as she rubbed her wrist. Sure, it was only training, so it wasn't a big deal, but she still felt annoyed at losing. Especially since her rival didn't even seem pleased about winning. Captain, it's time to meet the client, a mercenary said as he walked up, getting Geralt's attention. It's that time already? All right, you two, make sure to put your gear away, and stick by the camp till I get back, okay? Yes, sir. Okay, Papa. Taking off their helmets, the two young girls made their way towards the storage tent. You know, you could at least act happy that you won, Shay muttered as they entered the tent. Tilting her head slightly, Byleth stared at Shay. But I am happy. You sure don't act like you are. She gave Byleth a curious look. In fact, I don't think I've ever seen you smile. Huh. Byleth didn't seem to have a response to that. She just set her helmet down in its place and began unbuckling the training armor she wore. Hey, bye. She paused and looked over at Shay. Bye. Yeah, it's your name. Well, part of it. It's a shortened version, it makes it easier to say, but that's not important. I have a very serious question, Shay stated. She pressed her hands together in a way she'd seen some adults do when they were thinking. Or praying. One or the other. Do you know what emotions are? Somehow, Byleth's usual flat look looked even flatter. I'm not stupid. I didn't say you are. Shay frowned, then shook off her annoyance. Hey. Don't leave. Byleth turned around. Okay, so you know what emotions are, that's good. That makes my new plans even easier. Byleth turned. Shay grabbed Byleth's arm to keep her from leaving. No. Listen. I'm going to help you express yourself. Let go of my arm. Not until you agree to my lesson plan. Papa says I'm allowed to hit people if they grab me. Shay frowned, but let go of Byleth's arm. Okay, fine, but first, I want to see you smile. Prove to me that you can do it. I don't want to. Why not? It's really easy. Shay smiled wide, showing her teeth in a bright grin. See? Now you do it. Byleth showed her teeth. It couldn't reasonably be called a smile by any metric, but to call it a grimace would ascribe emotion that just wasn't there. Shay tilted her head. Huh. Okay, maybe not like that, try it again with your lips closed. The second attempt was worse. Byleth clearly had enough of an idea of what a smile looked like, but her ability to actually make her lips curl upwards properly into one was so completely lacking even Shay felt faintly unnerved. Huh, okay, that was better, you actually had kind of a smile there. Luckily, Shay wasn't the type to let discomfort get to her. But you need to sort of move your eyes. And not stretch your lips that far. It kinda looked like someone cut your cheeks when you did that. She stopped smiling. But we can work on it. Actually, do you know how to make any other expressions? What does it look like when you get mad? Like this. Really? Huh, okay, what about when you're sad? For the first time in her life, Byleth felt like sighing. Gerald felt like sighing. His more annoying clients were usually nobles, but there was something about a village headman with an inflated ego that just felt uniquely irritating. At least the job wouldn't be too difficult. Clearing a band of bandits could vary in difficulty, but from all indications, this gang was a small one. Not too much trouble. At least he could let the girls stay in town while he was out handling things. It always felt better when he didn't have to worry about Byleth. Speaking of Byleth, he could hear someone in his tent again. It was noisier these days since Shay joined up, especially since she decided Byleth was her rival, and that was definitely her voice. Made a bunch of these, so you have to look at them. That was a weird sentence. He wasn't completely sure why, but he moved carefully and slowly opened the tent flap, enough to peek inside instead of just announcing his presence. Byleth and Shay were sitting on his daughter's cot, and Shay was showing his daughter papers. See, this one's a happy face. See how the eyes are curled like this? And the smiles, wait, I need to explain this like a teacher, see how the lips are curled like this? That's a smile. I know what a smile is. Yeah, but it's part of the explanation. What in the world were they doing? Okay, just remember, this is a happy face. Shay insisted as she waved the paper in her hand near his daughter's face. She set it down and picked up another paper, and Gerald felt an eyebrow raise when he saw the blue frowning face on it. And this is a sad face. See how it's drooping? The eyes are curled differently, and the lips are frowning, not smiling. Okay. And there's usually tears and snot when someone's crying, so it's gross. I think the lips are kind of pouty too. But pouting's different from frowning. You jut out your lip when you're pouting or puff up your face, stuff like that. Did you draw that? I didn't think I needed to, that's for next time. For the advanced class. Gerald started to get an idea of what was going on here, and he wasn't sure if he should be annoyed at Shay for trying to push Byleth to emote, or glad she cared enough about his kid to try helping. Anyway. This next one's a med face. It's for when you're angry. See how the eyes are glaring and the mouth is frowning? It's a different frown from a sad frown though. It's a snarl, I think. Or maybe a scowl. It's very grrrrr. Try making that noise. It'll help. Grrrrr, Byleth growled in complete monotone. Okay, maybe not like that, it's okay, we'll work on it. Hi Papa. Ah, guess he was noticed. Byleth looked over at him and Shay followed her gaze a second later. The purple-haired girl squeaked, and Gerald felt like he shouldn't be amused by her obvious surprise. He was, of course, but still. See Captain Gerald, sir. She tried to salute and smacked herself in the face with the paper. Since she couldn't see it, he let himself smile for a brief second before putting his stern face back on. Shay, what are you doing? I was trying to teach Byleth about emotions. She wants me to smile better so she knows when I'm happy, Byleth explained. Yeah, that. Exactly. Wow, you're a good student. Gerald knew his daughter wasn't the emotive type. It gave him no end of concern in her early years, but he got used to it, and he knew that while she didn't show much emotion, she wasn't completely emotionless. So he felt some amusement at seeing a flicker of annoyance cross Byleth's face, followed by actual surprise when Shay gave her a pat on the head. What are you doing? Oh, this is what my mom did when I did well in her lessons. It feels nice, right? Yeah. Papa does that too sometimes. Oh hey, that's. Shay seemed to remember Gerald was still there and dropped her hand from Byleth's head with a sheepish smile. And, while it went quick, for a moment, Gerald thought he saw his daughter pout. Relax, I'm not mad, Gerald said. He was having a hard time keeping himself from smiling. I don't mind if you two do stuff like this. It's better than any unsupervised magic or sparring. Shay ducked her head, embarrassed, and he took a moment to glance at the papers at her side. Which? How much paper did you use? Huh? Shay glanced at the small pile. I tried making one for every emotion I could think of, so. You know that stuff costs money, right? Maybe he was having too much fun messing with the new kid, but the stricken look on her face was priceless. Well, whatever. I'll just take the cost out of your pay. Wait, I'm getting paid. You're part of the group, so yeah, you're getting paid. Ask me later and I'll hand over what you've already racked up. I should get paid too, Byleth piped up. You already get an allowance. I should get more. I work here too. Sure, but you're also my kid, which makes it an allowance instead of pay. And you're too young to ask me for a raise, so don't bother. Don't worry, I'm sure when you're a full-blown mercenary like me, you'll get a bigger allowance. Shay reassured. Then she smiled brightly. See. That's an angry face. Good job. Chapter 5, Visiting a Village. You're pouting. Byleth said as she stared at Shay. Of course I am. Shay responded while she continued sulking, it's not fair the captain is making us wait here while they go on a mission. We have a mission. Buying supplies isn't a mission. It's a chore. Papa said it's an assignment, Byleth contradicted, he also said you need to buy more paper to replace the ones you used. Shay huffed in annoyance, before looking at the list Captain Gerald gave her. The list written on paper, she might add, so it wasn't just her wasting it. Not that the stuff she made was a waste. Okay, the list says we need paper and ink, which some merchants should maybe have. Also smoked or salted meat from the butchery, leather if there's a tanner, some extra bandages and vulneraries. Eesh, there's a lot here, how are we gonna carry all of this? We're not. Papa wants us to order the things on the list. We tell the seller we need it and then someone from the camp gets it later. Oh, that makes so much more sense. Do you do this a lot? Byleth shrugged. Not a lot. I usually go with Papa. Well in that case, I'll be taking charge. But I'm older. And which one of us is the actual paid mercenary? Hey, you're getting good at the angry face. Grinning, Shay grabbed her hand. Besides, do you want to be the one talking to the villagers? At the lack of response, Shay smiled again, before pulling Byleth along. So, you thinking of buying anything else? Bread sounds nice. Well, yeah, but anything else besides food. Byleth tilted her head in faint confusion. You know, like a book, or something else. Actually, do you have any hobbies? Fishing is nice. I'm really starting to feel like I'm the older one. You're not. I could be. When were you born? Byleth tilted her head in thought. Not sure. Papa says I was born in Horsebow though. Okay. So that's the 1, 2, 3, 6th month. I think, were you born in fall? I guess. When were you born? Shay paused. I don't know. Mom and I didn't really celebrate birthdays, and I don't remember anything from before she took me in. Oh. When did she take you in? No idea. Shay confidently proclaimed, so I'm probably older than you. How does that make sense? It just does. Now come on. Forced to concede to Shay's unassailable logic, or just not really interested in continuing this conversation, Byleth resigned herself to being pulled along by the definitely not older girl. And so, while Shay and Byleth went around purchasing supplies, Byleth did her best to remember just how old she was. She remembered her papa saying Shay was maybe 12 and Byleth was sure she was older than that, maybe. She got her dagger as a present to celebrate her 10th year? How many years ago was that? Alrighty, that should be everything, and hey, we got some spare gold if we want to get something for ourselves. Shay announced, snapping Byleth out of her thoughts. Use your own money. Ah, come on, it's not like he's gonna know. I thought you were a paid mercenary. That definitely got Shay to shut her mouth, before she huffed. Fine, I'll use my own money, Shay muttered as she looked around to see what exactly the village was selling. It wasn't exactly a sprawling place, so they didn't have much when it came to commodities. Even so, the merchant selling vulneraries also had a few odds and ends, so there was something at least. Oh hey, bye, look. Grabbing a book titled Of Knights and Mages, Shay showed it off to Byleth. This is a story my mom read to me before, it has the destined rivals. Grinning, she handed it to Byleth. Here, a present from me? Really? Of course. Handing over some gold for the book, Shay continued smiling. It might be a few months late, but as the older one it's only right I get you a present. Glancing over at the wares, Byleth paused for a moment, before grabbing a hair clip and putting it on Shay, moving her hair out of her eye in the process. Here. Present for you, we can make today your birthday. For a brief moment, Shay could have sworn Byleth seemed smug. And since it's after my birthday that means you're younger than me. Hey, wait, that's cheating. No it's not. Yeah, it is, hey, don't walk away. Shay demanded. She felt her face redden, especially when she heard the merchant snicker from behind her, before she huffed and followed after Byleth. She quickly caught up to the shorter girl and bumped her shoulder against hers. You're lucky it's my birthday so I'm feeling generous. Byleth didn't dignify that with a response, leading Shay to pout again. So, hey, do you know how to read? I just realized it would be a bad idea to get you a book if you can't read it. I can read. Papa taught me how. Oh, that makes sense. Captain Gerald seems smart. Hey, tell me more about yourself. Why? Because I don't know a lot about you and I should if you're gonna be my destined rival. Here, I'll go first. My name is Shay. I know that part. I was born in, not sure, but I'm from, wait, what was the village called? You don't know a lot about yourself. Hey. I know, important stuff. What about you? Where were you born? I don't know. Shay blinked. Wait, you too? Wow, that's funny. And more proof that we're destined to be rivals. Byleth's lips twitched for a moment. That hadn't happened before, so she was a little surprised by her own reaction. It didn't feel like too big of a deal though, so she kept leading the way towards the camp. Well, I don't really know much about my birth parents. Mom didn't know much about them either, she said she found me when I was abandoned, but I think they're probably dead. Maybe from war or something. Shay shrugged. Oh, my mom's name was Periander. That's important, right? I guess. My papa's name is Geralt. I knew that part already. Do you know your mom's name? Byleth paused. She didn't. I don't. I never met her. She probably died then, Shay noted. She nodded to herself, confident in her guess, then noticed Byleth had stopped walking. Oh. Oh, sorry. I didn't. It's okay. I didn't really think about it before. Hey, come on. Shay took Byleth's hand and pulled her along, leading her over to one of the trees in between the edge of town and the edge of where their camp was set up. She sat down under it, and patted the ground beside herself. "Sit." Byleth sat. Shay smiled, then scooted closer to Byleth and pulled her new book open to the first page. "Here, let's read together. You can learn about destined rivals." "Okay." Byleth settled in, letting her back rest against the trunk of the tree, and began to read. "Ugh, do we really have to bring back the leader's head? Can't we just go with an ear? That's so much easier to carry," complained one of Geralt's mercenaries on the way back to camp. He was one of the longer-lasting ones, though Geralt wasn't totally sure which one he was. Either Victor or Hector, something like that, or Harold. Or, no, it was probably Victor. "The headman made his terms clear," Geralt said, glancing back at his complaining subordinate. "Besides, you're the one who decided to bet on who had to carry it." "Yeah, but I didn't think I'd lose." He tried not to sigh as he trudged back with the rest of his band, leading Argo by his reins for the moment. The woods had been too dense to really go in as proper cavalry, so what would have been an easy route turned into a bloody fight. Not on his side, at least. The blood currently dripping off his troops wasn't their own, though cleaning everything off was going to be a pain. "Ah. Captain, look at that." He paused in his thoughts and glanced over to where another of his mercs was pointing. Sitting underneath a tree was Byleth and Shay, a book in both their laps as the two kids leaned on each other, obviously asleep. "Dia, that's sweet," Victor said, before casually hoisting the sack holding the bandit boss's head over his shoulder. "Right, guess that means I'll be handing this over. You see to your kids, Captain, I'll see if I can bring the money back." "Yeah, all right, go for it," he agreed, waving his troops off. He looked over at his daughter again. She looked relaxed. Just completely at peace. "Yeah, there's no way she's going to let Shay go," he muttered under his breath, before heading over to the two. If Byleth was a few years younger, he might have picked her up and taken her to her bed, but even if age wasn't about to catch up to him anytime soon, she was definitely getting too heavy for that. And he wasn't sure what to do with Shay in that situation, so he lightly shook his daughter's shoulder. "Hey kid, wake up." With a slight fluttering of her eyes, Byleth woke up to stare up at her dad. "Papa." "Hey there, sorry for waking you up, but you two should really sleep in a tent instead of under a tree," Geralt said, speaking softly. Okay." Closing the book, Byleth held it close. "Papa, what was Mum's name?" Geralt needed a second. No, what he needed was to be deep in his cups so this question wouldn't feel like a sucker punch straight to his gut. But he didn't have that. What he had was a daughter asking about her mother for the first time. And he had no idea how to begin that conversation. So he just answered her. Citrai. Her name was Citrai. She looked up at him, her blue eyes completely unlike his own. He could so clearly see her mother in her that it hurt, like an old wound reopened. Byleth moved up and leaned her head against his chest, like she used to when she was little and tired. "She died." "Yeah, kid. She did." No more questions came after that. Byleth just stayed close, and before long, his daughter was asleep again. Geralt let out a slow, soft sigh, and picked her up. It was easier than he expected. He glanced down at Shay, sighed, and lightly shook her awake too. "I'm up," she snapped awake, blinking rapidly, then seemed to recognize his presence. Hey Captain." Oh. Mission accomplished. We put in orders and I don't need a full report. Come on, if you two are this tired, you should get to bed." I am not tired." Her immediate yawn proved she was lying, and Geralt couldn't help his slight grin at her embarrassed look. "Want me to carry you too?" "And no. I can walk," she insisted, and did a good job of getting up too. Still, he kept an eye on her as they headed back to the tent. And while Geralt would never admit it, at least while he was sober, he found it nice that she was there. His daughter needed a friend, and he was glad she found one. Check the description for the links to the author.